I gotta admit, I never thought I would end up liking a game like Resident Evil. I mean, I've made a few attempts in the past to get into the series, but I've always found a reason to stop. The overabundance of gore, the cliche jump scares, and then there's stuff like the saving mechanics from the first game. I mean, I get limited resources, but how is a save a resource? I mean, come on. So, all in all, I decided to drop the franchise. But then came the fall of 2023, and I was in a spooky mood. Alan Wake wasn't really scratching that itch, and so I decided, you know what, even if Resident Evil 2 kinda grosses me out, it at least doesn't have the saving mechanics like in the first game, so I might as well give it a shot. And honestly, thank God I decided to give it another shot, because after playing the remake of Resident Evil 2, I decided to retry the first game, specifically the HD remake, and god damn do I love this game. I even found myself kinda liking the saving mechanics. While I have only been a fan of the series for about a short time now, I still can't get over how great the gameplay in these games are. Freely exploring your surroundings, collecting items to solve puzzles, examining items to further discover entire new ones. Then there's the different type of puzzles. Oh my god, RE0 in particular has some of my all-time favorite in the series. I especially love this train puzzle. Like, fuck yeah, do I love this shit. I need more games that give me these type of puzzles. They're fucking awesome. It's funny, I knew this game series had puzzles, but I've always assumed it was like move block over switch kind of puzzle, you know? And they do have some of that, but I didn't realize it borrowed a lot of elements from point and click adventure games, which is one of my favorite genres. I mean, I've played Alone in the Dark before, and I've heard people say that the game takes a lot of inspiration from Alone in the Dark, but I always thought they were talking about stuff like the survival horror aspects. You see, when people talk about Resident Evil, they usually talk about things like the combat or the resource management, which aren't bad gameplay mechanics. I do enjoy them, but they're not really a sexy selling point for people like me. Freely exploring your environment, item-based puzzles, moody, quiet, and almost isolating atmosphere, a fucking train full of zombies? Jill Valentine? Yeah, that's all selling points for people like me that kind of don't really care too deeply about resource management. You know, I would say Resident Evil has helped me get into games like this. I've been meaning to check out games like Crow's Country and Tormented Souls, and I'd love to play some of the original Silent Hill games one day. What's interesting about Resident Evil though is that after getting into the series, I was kind of reminded of a game I used to play a lot as a child. A game that's not really meant for adults. A game based off a cartoon character. A game that's a lot similar to Resident Evil. Now, this 64 game is one of those 64 games I cannot recall how my brother and I got our hands on. I do remember the day we got the Nintendo 64, and I remember it coming with Donkey Kong. I remember my uncle giving us a literal basket full of 64 titles, and I remember within that basket was Mario 64, which was something I was obsessed with. Then we have a game like Scooby-Doo Classic Creep Capers, a mouthful of a title, and I, for the life of me, cannot remember where this thing came from. I don't remember picking it up at the store, and I don't remember anyone gifting it to us. But regardless, I'm pretty glad we did get our hands on it, because not only did it introduce me to a style of gameplay I really like, in a way, it was kind of my first Resident Evil game. In a really, really weird way. There's a lot of similarities Scooby-Doo Classic Creep Capers has with the original Resident Evil games. Basically, this is a game that's trying to mimic survival horror rather than be a survival horror. Honestly though, I really hate calling this game a survival horror, as it's not really survival. I mean, it does feature a sort of health meter, which I guess is more of a courage meter, if I'm going to be honest, than a health meter. Basically, if your courage meter drops to 0, Shaggy will run away and the game will respawn back to the nearest checkpoint. But there's no like actual resource management in this game. I mean, you're not finding save ribbons or, any other health related items. This game just has Resident Evil ingredients rather than being a Resident Evil clone, if that makes sense. And I do apologize if I keep bringing up Resident Evil throughout the entire episode. It's just the sort of base comparison I will be comparing this game to. I mean, they're similar in the sense that this game also features things like fixed camera angles, free exploration of your environments. You're able to unlock different areas to explore by doing things like finding keys to lock doors, solving puzzles with items, or just, flipping the right switch to unlock a secret room. Controlling the game is actually a tad bit wonky with the fixed camera angles because you control Shaggy with a joystick. Now, controlling Shaggy feels similar to how it felt controlling Jill in the HD remake of the first Resident Evil game. It's not tank controls, which means it can get a little bit annoying at times. The controls do that thing where when you're going straight, camera angle would just change, and it causes your brain to think that you need to move the joystick in the same direction Shaggy is going, but when you do that, Shaggy ends up going the opposite direction or just entirely different direction, and then the camera angle changes again, and then you're kind of in this weird purgatory loop of, constantly trying to adjust the controls as the camera angles are just, flipping back and forth, and it's nuts. It's annoying. However, I just learned that this game actually does have tank controls. To activate tank controls, you pretty much just go to the control menu at the pause screen, and yeah, you can flip it to control B, which instead of using the joystick to control Shaggy, you actually use the D-pad instead. Now, personally, I don't know which control scheme is actually better. I still like controlling Shaggy with the joystick, even though I mentioned that annoying thing that happens, as controlling him with the joystick does make him feel faster, and I don't have to deal with that slow rotation with the tank controls. But I do end up running into walls a lot, which is kind of annoying, especially when you're being chased. On the other hand, I do feel like the tank controls are a bit more precise when controlling Shaggy. I just can't stand that slow rotation when I'm running from a ghost that's chasing me. But I do find it cool that if you want the option for tank controls, this game allows you to have it. I love that option, And it's pretty cool because this is like one of the few games that I feel that the 64 actually uses the D-pad, so it's kind of cool in its own self. Given that there's no combat in this game, your main objective is to mostly find items around the game world. Finding items is extremely easy as the game usually just has them lying around out in the open, and they're super easy to find because they're glowing. The items you collect are either usable or they're items you can hand off to Fred. The items you hand to Fred are either clues or things you can use for traps. I do enjoy this type of gameplay as it helps indicate an objective, and collecting the items and traps help progress you through the level. However, I do kind of wish these trap items were a bit more interactive. I don't mind handing clues to Fred as a way to make progress in the game, but I just kind of wish they could have maybe incorporated some kind of trap building mechanics. I mean, you're already gathering items and the game already allows you to use items for puzzles. It would have been cooler to have to actually take these items and position them in areas that will create traps so that you can, capture the monster. I wonder if the developers maybe thought it would have been, boring, or maybe they thought it would have made the game too long. Whatever the case may be, I just feel like a Scooby-Doo game that has trap building mechanics would have probably been more engaging and probably more memorable. Most of the puzzles you encounter in this game are pretty straightforward. I mean, I would say that there are no testament of Sherlock Holmes level of difficulty when it comes to puzzles. Heck, they're not even on the same level as Spy Fox. This game just features very simple and pretty obvious puzzles. It's mostly item-based solving puzzles. For example, here we have Shaggy in need of trying to get rid of this white wolf that's blocking the path. So naturally, to solve this obstacle, you pretty much just have to wander around the game world until you find the right item in order to move him. The item in question ends up being a bone found in a sawmill. A sawmill that just has automatic saws moving around at all times. Huh. This makes me wonder how this bone really got here. Anyway, you take the bone to the dog and he'll pretty much move. I would say though, the game does feature some a little bit more elaborate puzzles. Again, not on the same level of difficulty as, say, a game like Spy Fox, as there was some pretty challenging puzzles in that game, for children at least. In the third level, you'll come across these statues with compass markings. To solve this puzzle, you'll first have to talk to this bird. He'll say something like, "Polly want a cracker," which is a hint to find a cracker and to give it to him. He'll then tell you the compass directions. You then take these directions and then you go to the stone heads and rotate them towards the correct points. This will then open up a new path. And upon investigating that new path, you'll come across a stone with numbers all around it. Yeah, this code for this puzzle actually stumped me. So, let me give you a little backstory about this level. Before I solved the Stonehead puzzle, I actually came across these 2 coins. So, what you do with these 2 coins is you go to this tiki bar here and you insert them into the jukebox. What would happen is the song will change. Now, when I first did this, I thought that maybe these coins would be relevant later on, as one usually does, and I'm still kind of unsure if they were or weren't. Honestly, you see, when I discovered the statues with the numbers, I thought that maybe to solve this puzzle, the jukebox would somehow play a part in solving it. And given I had already found 2 tokens, I somehow convinced myself that there might have been a third. Like, I thought, okay, well, I found 2 tokens, I insert them in the jukebox, I came across this code, clearly I'm missing a token because I don't have the code, so I might as well search the entire game map for another token that may or may not exist. Yeah, and I don't know if I was trying to base this off like childhood memories of playing this game. I have no idea. Either way, I ended up searching the entire game map for about a good hour, looking around pretty much every corner for a coin that may or may not existed. I even came upon these stone landmarks or grave marks. I don't know what these were. They were just like these objects that upon investigating, Shaggy would say something like, "Oh, he can't open them." And so I immediately thought that they were in fact openable. I immediately assumed that because he said it can't be open, I thought that was a hint that I needed to find something to open it. Because throughout this entire game, usually when Shaggy examines an item, he usually gives some sort of generic response that is not relevant to the item. It's usually like, "I can't search here," or something, or there's nothing here," or something like that. So after an hour of exploring, I came to the conclusion that I'm an idiot and I'm wrong. I have to be wrong because I've searched literally every corner of this map, this boring, empty map. I searched and there's nothing. So, I was at least looking for maybe like a crowbar or something. I don't know. I was trying to find like anything that could open a coffin or something. I was just looking for it. And then I thought maybe the parrot has something to do with this, because when you give him a cracker for the Stonehead puzzle, you actually still get to keep the crackers. So I thought maybe because I had the crackers in my inventory that somehow I have to keep feeding him until he gives me the answer. So I kept giving him crackers over and over, and no, he just ends up giving me the direction code again. And then, for some odd reason, I just decided to talk to him, and he gives me the code. I don't know if those coins I found actually maybe triggered something, and then he just gives you the code, or maybe it was the crackers. I don't know, actually. You see, my confusion lies with the fact that you can't really talk to anyone throughout the game, besides maybe the security guard in the beginning of the game, and of course the gang. And when I first talked to the parrot, he just said he wanted a cracker, so I assumed that that was the only line of dialogue he had. I didn't bother to re-talk to him. And the thing is, given that most of the times when you talk to the gang, they usually just repeat their dialogue, so I assumed anytime you did in fact talk to anyone, there would be no multiple dialogue. I honestly didn't think that this parrot, out of everyone in the game, would have multiple dialogue. Either way, I found the code and just, proceeded with the level. Regardless of how I found the code, I do always appreciate when games actually make you input codes. One of my favorite puzzles in Resident Evil is the John, Ada, and Cell passcode that you can actually input into the computer down in the underground Umbrella laboratory. You see, I'm not a fan of the just press A gameplay and watch the character magically do something. I actually like having to physically input something into a system because that's a little bit more rewarding, in my opinion. Because it takes a thing that you just discovered and it allows you to interact with it, rather than watching a character go, "I solved it." Okay, let's talk about the enemies. The enemies in the games are stupid. You have things that just scare Shaggy. Those things could be like mice, bats, and spiders, which, anytime they touch Shaggy, it lowers his courage meter. But then you have other things that can scare Shaggy, like those automatic saws, or even interacting with a mirror one time scared Shaggy and lowered his health. While I do find this kind of funny, it's also kind of stupid because it kind of deters me from wanting to interact with objects. Luckily, the game doesn't do a lot of interacting with objects. I think on a few occasions Shaggy will open something, like in the beginning of the game, Shaggy can open these mummy tombs to find a sandbag, but this game doesn't really have a whole lot of open chest or open drawer kind of gameplay. When something does deal Shaggy damage, it's actually not a whole lot, so it's not that big of a deal. However, each level has a main ghost, and these guys usually deal like 1/4 of damage to your life. Speaking of main ghost, each level has a main enemy. The first level has the Black Knight, the second level has the Snow Ghost, the third level has the Witch Doctor, and the fourth has this guy called the Ghoul King. Now, what's cool about these main enemies is that they can kind of pop up in specific rooms and actually physically chase you. Unlike the, bats and mice that just kind of go back and forth in this automatic pattern, the main ghost will actually chase you around the room. Usually leaving the room will get them off your back, but some rooms allow you to hide from the ghost, which will force the ghost to leave that area just for a while. Take the Black Knight for example. You see this wall? Well, it actually is giving you a clue that you need to find an item that pairs with it. Again, luckily finding items in this game is super easy, unless you're an idiot like me. So to get the Black Knight out of the room, you pretty much have to run past the wall, get him to chase you, run back to the wall, go into your inventory, equip the Egyptian headdress, and then activate it on the wall, which will activate a cutscene that will show the Black Knight being confused because apparently he's an idiot. And yeah, he'll leave the room, which means you can freely explore what he was guarding. Now, the ghosts don't always show up in rooms with hiding spots, so some rooms you actually just have to get chased by the ghosts and try to pick up items on the way. It's actually interesting gameplay. Now, there are some occasions where the ghost will actually chase you outside of the room, because usually when you leave the room, the ghost won't follow. But towards the end of each level, the ghost can chase you from room to room. So the point of this is that you actually have to lure the ghosts into a trap. The trap is usually like on the other side of the game map, so you gotta go from one point to the other. It can be challenging, but it's actually kind of fun. You see, the challenge comes from the fact that when you're being chased by the ghost, you have to sort of dodge all these obstacles. Obstacles usually include things like navigating a maze or trying to avoid animatronics from killing you. The second level with the snow ghost in particular allows you to actually lure the snow ghost into a ski ramp, which will then activate a mini game that actually reminds me of the game Ski Free, which came with like every Windows, I think it was late 90s, early 2000s, one of them. Either way, it was a free game where you can get eaten by a Yeti. It was terrifying, but fun. Now, I would say out of all the gameplay elements in this game, this one is actually probably one of the best, as I feel like this type of gameplay really separates this game from something like Resident Evil, because in RE, you usually just shoot the monsters to defeat them. In this game, you actually have to lure them into a trap in order to defeat them. Defeating them, though, is just as simple as going from room to room and then watching a cutscene of the monster being defeated. No real interaction, but I would say the chase and the dodging of the obstacles is probably what makes this fun. Now, there are other chasers in this game that aren't actually ghosts. In the beginning, the museum has a security guard that will chase you everywhere in the first floor. If he sees you, you can just kind of sneak around him, but if he sees you, he'll blow his whistle and then chase you from room to room until he captures you. When he captures you, he usually just kicks you out of the museum. He doesn't like lower your health or anything. He's really not that hard to avoid. In fact, there's actually a puzzle where you can make him trip so you can steal his key. Now, there is another chaser in this game, kind of. He doesn't chase you from room to room, but in the Snow Ghost episode, you'll come across a library inside of the lodge, which is weird that there's a library in a ski lodge, but whatever. Anyway, the library is kind of a maze, and he'll chase you when you see him, and so you have to leave the room and then come back into the room. And when you come back into the room, he'll be gone, so then you can freely explore what he was, sort of up to, and you can find the piece of evidence that he was hiding and that he for some reason dropped because he's incompetent. So with that said, I feel like the main ghost and these chaser enemies should have maybe been the only enemies in the game to an extent. I mean, I still think trying to dodge the dinosaurs is interesting and adds to challenge, but then you have like these mice and spiders, and I felt like they were pointless. Like what was like, they're just stupid, you know? They felt unnecessary, and just they felt like a way to just pad out the game to add a little bit of challenge. But I feel like the challenges could have come from maybe more complex puzzles rather than trying to dodge a fucking spider, you know? Or they could have just maybe added more chaser enemies, you know? I don't know. So they could have done so much more interesting things than just this. Plus, like I mentioned, you have to sneak around the guard, and that was actually kind of interesting because you had to make sure he doesn't see you so you can get by through each room and go to the elevator. It was cool. I liked it. It was not Metal Gear Solid sneaky, but you know, it was interesting. Maybe that's what they need to do, add like Sam Fisher style gameplay where Shaggy can take him out with a fucking pistol. Now, this game is actually really short. I think I could have completed it within an hour if I didn't get so tripped up with the, you know, fucking code puzzle from the witch doctor level. Fuck that. What's cool about these levels is that they're actually based off an episode of Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? You know, the original show. Now, the only level that's actually original is the 4th level, which is the last level. And each level, or I guess we can call them episodes, each episodes contains its own game map that you can explore. Episode 1 is the famous Black Knight episode where you get to explore the museum. Although I do kind of wish the game map was a tad bit bigger in this level in particular, because I don't know, I liked that episode, and I don't know, the map in this game is not as accurate to the show. You know, in the show there was like, I think like airplane exhibits and stuff. It was cool. I liked that. Plus I like exploring museums. I just feel like the museum would have been a perfect setting for maybe a bigger and longer Scooby-Doo game. I don't know. Now, the museum has about 3 levels you can explore. There's the outside, which honestly has nothing to explore. I mean, you have the mystery machine, which is cool, I guess. But inside the museum, you have the first floor. Now, the first floor has about 4-ish rooms. You have the main lobby where the guard is wandering around. You have the president's dummy collection, and a room that's full of abstract art that actually has a secret room if you activate the switch. Then, of course, there's the kitchen. Now, the kitchens are probably one of the coolest features in this game, as they help regenerate your health. You see, when your health gets low, you can just find a kitchen and play this stack the sandwich minigame, which is really funny. Once the time runs out, Shaggy will, you know, pretty much eat it and your health will regenerate. Now, I love this because I'm a fan of food being able to heal people in video games. I think that's just a very common and relatable task I would see in a game. It's like, oh yeah, eat a bowl of soup and you regain your HP. That's awesome. Like, I do that all the time. I eat bowls of soup all the time. My HP doesn't regain, but like, it's cool. It's relatable, you know? Going up the elevator to the 2nd floor, you can explore the lobby, which acts as the hub for the other 2 rooms you can also explore. You have the Egyptian exhibit, which is where the Black Knight usually hides. In that room, there's also a locked door that you can unlock via key, which was just, you know, a maintenance closet. Nothing really special. I mean, there's evidence you can collect in this closet, but it's okay. Lastly, of course, you have the dinosaur room, which for some odd reason, these dinosaurs are set on kill mode. As to why they're set on kill mode, I don't know. It just adds challenge to the game, I guess. This room is where you actually find Velma, who gets kidnapped early on by the Black Knight. And it'll also be the room where you have to get the Black Knight to chase you and lure him into the Egyptian room where the trap is set. Yeah, this room can get pretty annoying during that chase sequence because it seems that the most tiniest things will hit Shaggy. Even if it's just like the tip of the tail, it feels like it just hits Shaggy. I don't know what's going on with the hit detection. And that lowers his health. And then the Black Knight will catch you and he will also lower your health. It can be kind of frustrating. And because the camera constantly changes, you do that weird control thing where you're like, what the fuck am I doing? So at the end of the story, of course, there's the wrap up. You know, you capture the ghost, and surprise, surprise, the ghost is the museum curator. And apparently he's running an art theft operation. And so after, you know, he's arrested and whatnot, the game gets back into the mystery machine and rides off into the sunset or the night or whatever. And at the end, it turns out that the Black Knight is actually just a pawn in this mysterious person's scheme. Honestly though, this fucking portrait used to scare the shit out of me when I was a child. Like, look at this guy, it's fucking creepy. It's not kid friendly. Who made this game? THQ. The next level is the Snow Ghost, which honestly as a child, I remember really loving this episode. As an adult though, I am actually not super impressed with this level. I don't know, I loved snow as a kid, so I was like, oh, it's a snow level, that's cool. As an adult, I'm like, this level is just kind of boring, honestly. I mean, that's all it is, it's a snow level. Exploring the lodge was just very underwhelming, as each room you explore aren't really all that interesting. There are usually just small rooms with like 1 or 2 items that are just on the floor. Now there is a locked door where you end up getting a key, and that's still boring. It's an attic with those annoying automatic enemies running back and forth, and there's items at the end of the attic. It's like, you know? See, the thing is though, I'm just not a fan of how wasteful a lot of these environments are. Like, when you're exploring, you end up coming upon an area that's a dead end, and usually in my mind, I'm like, oh, there must be something in there. And then you get there and it's like, no, it's legit a dead end. It's wasteful. I don't know, I don't like wasteful environments. A lot of the obstacles in here just feel very fillery, you know? I mean, I think there's like, what? 1 main puzzle in this episode, maybe 2. I don't know. It was just a very underwhelming episode. Oh, I gotta avoid these bats and I gotta avoid the saws. Ooh. You know, for the sawmill, I kind of wish that they had maybe something more interactive with the saws. Like maybe there's a way to sort of stop the saws, you know, so that you can run freely. I don't know. I just wish there was something you can actually do than just dodge enemy. Same with the bats. I wish there was a way to like capture the bats or something. They're annoying. To defeat the Snow Ghost in this episode, you pretty much just lure him into the ski ramp and you have to play that ski ramp minigame I mentioned. It can be difficult at times because your objective is to avoid hitting anything, and you end up pretty much hitting everything. Because, you know, skis are on snow, so you kind of slide everywhere. It's like it's an ice level basically. And when the Snow Ghost catches up to you, he pretty much drains a lot of your health. Luckily there are Scooby snacks on the floor, but it's also, again, an ice level, so you just end up sliding past them rather than grabbing them. In the end, it turns out that the Snow Ghost was, shocker, the owner of the lodge, and he and his business partner, you know, that chasing asshole, were stealing relics from the locals. You know, there's a lot of thieves in Scooby-Doo. That's kind of like a common thing, it seems like. It's like everyone's just trying to steal shit. And then, you know, once the gang drives off, we get another piece of dialogue from our mysterious main bad guy. Ooh. Scary. Seriously, he was scary. Fuck this guy. Now, out of all the environments that annoyed me in this game, the Hawaiian episode with the witch doctor actually got on my nerves. And it was probably because I ended up wandering around it for an hour and getting, you know, stupidly lost. Honestly though, I just hated how uneventful some of these areas that you're exploring are in this level. This level is pretty long and it's pretty tedious to navigate. While I do appreciate that this level actually had some pretty interesting puzzles, I just hated exploring it. It's like corner after corner after corner of just empty space. Nothing here. The camera angle changes and it's just, there's nothing specifically here to do or to look at. It's just, here's a corner, there's nothing here. Oh boy. I don't like this episode. As a child, I never liked it because I felt like it was too long, and as an adult, I see why it's too long, and it's because there's just nothing to do other than these 2 puzzles that are actually good. It's like this game is just padded with interesting things inside of uneventful things, if that makes sense. I do enjoy the tiki bar that you can explore. Like visually, I like this tiki bar. I like that when you go in the kitchen, the lighting is very amber, you know, it really adds to like sort of that warm tropical vibe. But all in all, I'm just not a fan of this level. The witch doctor ends up being a man named Mr. Sims, and surprise, surprise, he has been stealing from the natives. Now the last level is the only level that's actually original. It was not in any shows, it was meant for this game. I would say though, in comparison to the other levels, this level had the makings of a very, very Resident Evil-like Scooby-Doo game. The environment was also a bit spookier and even had some jump scares, especially in this hallway, but these fucking wall mounts. Fuck these things. I used to jump all the time as a child. Even as an adult, I was like, oh, fucking yay. Like, I knew they were gonna happen, and I still got jumped. Fuck you, game. fuck you. I even felt like the level itself had just a whole lot more going on. It had more interesting interactive gameplay. It utilized the item-based puzzle format a whole lot better than it did in the other levels. For example, there's this room, right? This room with this tentacle monster coming out of the bed. I'm sure a lot of people are gonna say something about that. But anyway, you can't go to the door and you can't collect the item in this room. So how do you solve this, right? To solve this puzzle, you have to find this music box. And then you have to go back to the room, equip it, and then play it. Like Shaggy would just play it if you press A. So, and the tune it plays puts it to sleep, which then allows you to easily explore that room, collect that item, and go through the other door. Once you leave the room and then come back to the room, the monster will still be asleep. And if you don't have the music box equipped or on, eventually he will wake up again. Now that was actually pretty cool. Yeah, I like this level. Honestly, I kind of wish that this level was the entire game, but bigger, kind of like the Spencer's Mansion. That's what I wish this level was like the main level that you explore, because the idea of exploring a castle is actually kind of interesting. Okay, I'm getting a little bit ahead myself. So the story for this level is that the Ghoul King has had enough of the mystery gang, messing with his operation. So he decides to kidnap all of them. And Shaggy and Scooby, being the idiots that they are, ends up getting lured into a stranger's van after following a trail of Scooby snacks. And once they're, lured in, they find themselves in this mysterious, dark dungeon. As to why the Ghoul King has a dungeon, I don't know. Although, yeah, this room is actually I think the second darkest room in the game. You can't see anything. Luckily, you don't really have to spend a lot of time in this room, so it's just a simple leave the room mission. It's just super dark. It's hard to see. This level takes place in this creepy castle that just has a lot of rooms to explore. It has a weird maze basement. It has that hallway with those creepy movie heads. It even has a hidden cave behind a fireplace, and you can even explore an outside area. And then when you're wandering around outside, you'll find a tool shack that you can enter, and then there's a weird coffin with someone in it. There's even like this random room with all these spinning gears that you have to sort of navigate your way through and avoid, and you have to climb ladder after ladder after ladder until you find Velma. While this level is impressive, I will say it is no Spencer's Mansion. Hell, it's not even the Raccoon City Police Department. It's an easy map to navigate like the rest, but in comparison to the other levels, it's just 10 times better and a little bit more engaging, as again, there's just more things to actually do in this level. I don't feel like there's a whole lot of wasted space in comparison to that Hawaiian level, and the progression of the level is a little bit more interesting as you're tasked to find and help out each member of the Scooby Gang. Mind you, some of the other levels did task you to rescue one member of the gang, like, Black Knight, Velma was kidnapped, the witch's ghost, Daphne was kidnapped, so it's not an uncommon gameplay element. But in this one, you have to find all 3 of Shaggy's friends. I would say trying to find Fred is actually probably the cooler mission, because you find him inside a coffin that was shut. I'm assuming the Ghoul King was gonna, bury him maybe. I don't know what was going on here. And to help him, you pretty much just have to find a hammer and open up the coffin. Velma and Daphne were probably the easiest to save, as when you found them, you just talk to them and then, oh, they're saved. Although, what's up with Daphne and always being in some kind of bondage in this game? I mean, in the Witch Doctor episode, she was in chains, and now she's in chains again. I'm starting to notice a pattern here. Now, luring the Ghoul King in this game was a bit of a challenge, to be honest, given you have to lure him from his office all the way through this maze. And the thing about this maze is that it can lead to multiple doors that lead to multiple areas, so trying to remember which door you have to lure him into was a bit of a challenge. I hate mazes. I just can never remember like little clues in order to navigate, and then plus the fixed camera angles that constantly change as you go from area to area. It confused me, and I guess, well, to be fair, that's part of the challenge, so I shouldn't complain because I'm a little bitch. Luckily though, it's not too difficult to find the right door, because you'll eventually find it. It's just, takes a while. In the end, it turns out the Ghoul King is none other than Rex Necros, who's a bad guy, I guess. He's the one who has been running all 3 of the operations with the Black Knight, the Snow Ghost, and the Witch's Doctor. Apparently, those 3 villains were like Rex's henchmen, or like a pawn in his scheme. What's also cool is that his identity throughout the entire game was kind of teased here and there. Like in the beginning of the game, Shaggy finds a bank statement with a one R. Necros name attached to it. I kind of like this because it does make these operations feel a little bit more connected, and it kind of foreshadows to who's really behind all these events. Now, the motives of Rex was because I don't know, he's a bad guy, I guess? Basically, he's just some sort of mastermind with a crime web, as they called it. I guess we can say he's a kingpin of some sort. I don't know. He's the bad guy. That's who he is. He's the bad guy. He's the bad guy. That's all you need to know. I don't know his motives. He's just the bad guy. You find him, you capture him, you put him in jail because he's the bad guy. Regardless of what motives regardless of his motives, if he's doing crime, put him in jail. Don't be a fucking idiot. All in all, I would say that this episode really had the better usage of that point and click style adventure gameplay, and exploring the castle, I would say, was more rewarding than some of the other levels. I do really like the museum level, but I just wish that level was a little bit bigger, as this castle just has more to do. It's got more puzzles to solve, a better objective than just capturing the ghost, and it feels more like Resident Evil than the episode with the witch doctor. What's really interesting about this game to me is that I feel it actually has all the right ingredients that could have made a pretty interesting Scooby-Doo game. The problem is that some of the execution is just a little underwhelming, and that could have been due to technical limitations of the Nintendo 64. Could have been due to a low budget or whatever. Apparently though, there was supposed to be a PlayStation 1 version of this game, but for some odd reason it got canceled. I don't know, maybe if it was on the PS1, we would have maybe a bit more compelling Resident Evil style clone. My point being is that this game contains a lot of good gameplay elements, and if someone were to make a new Scooby-Doo game, they really should just copy and take notes from a game like Silent Hill or Resident Evil. But of course, make it for kids. So you can't have those, big booby nurses running around in your Scooby-Doo game. Instead of multiple locations, they could have pulled a Spencer's Mansion and just have the gang explore one big castle, or how about an amusement park? Because amusement parks are kind of creepy, and there would be a lot of more interactive things to do in an amusement park. And it also still keeps that E rating, even though there's probably going to be a fucking clown or some shit. They could have still used multiple locations. I just feel like one giant location to explore would have been a little bit more compelling, as it would allow you to be more focused when it comes to implementing, better puzzles and more interactive environments. One of my biggest complaints about this game was that your environments weren't as interactive as they should been. Like in Resident Evil, if you explored a desk, you can find like a ink ribbon or something, or you flip a switch, you do something with your environments. In this game, it's just like your environments feel more like a set piece than an actual explorable world, if that makes sense. While there were puzzles in this game, I just kind of wish they were a bit more harder, or at least a bit more creative. Instead of just finding that bone in the sawmill, they could have done something like allow Shaggy to investigate objects more thoroughly. They could have done something like have Shaggy interact with maybe that fridge in the kitchen, and instead of activating the mini game, they could have had him find like one of those ham hocks that has like a bone sticking out. The Scooby-Doo mystery game for the Sega had an option to actually eat food. It would have been cool if there was an option to do that in this game, because back to the ham hock example, he could have just eaten the ham hock and then, oh, here's the bone, now the bone could be given to the wolf. That would have been way more interactive and way more interesting and creative. Again, I just feel like this game has the right ingredients, it just lacked certain creative execution, if that makes sense. I like this game. I still have a lot of fond memories of this game. It's very nostalgic for me, and I'm glad I got it. I'm glad I grew up playing this game, because it did lead me to experiencing a type of gameplay I really connect with. And one of the reasons why I love Resident Evil is because it has a lot of these elements that I'm familiar with because of Scooby-Doo. If somebody were to make a new Scooby-Doo game, I would encourage them not to take notes from a game like Super Mario or even Astrobots. I would encourage them to look at Silent Hill and Resident Evil and ask themselves, how can I make this for children? How can I scare the shit out of kids? And that's what they should do. Hey, look at that. You made it through an episode. Woohoo! I'm assuming you clicked on this episode because of that clickbaity thumbnail. Maybe? Maybe not? Maybe you're subscribed. I don't know what you're doing, man. Well, here's the full version of that drawing. Yeah, so I was feeling a bit sussy when I was coming up with a drawing for this video. If you're new to this channel, I'm an illustrator, and I try to incorporate some of my artsy-fartsy branding into these videos. So I'm ending each video with an original piece created by me, an artist. Yeah, this piece was semi-inspired by an older ink drawing I did of Jill Valentine's rescuing Shaggy and Scooby while they're in Raccoon City. When working on this video, I knew I was going to compare Resident Evil to this game a lot, so I thought might as well have something that would sort of marry the two ideas, and then I thought, why not just draw a sequel to a drawing I already did in the past. So I have done the whole Jill sandwich joke before, and as someone who likes jokes, I hate repeating jokes. I was a little like, not annoyed with drawing this, but I was kind of like losing interest because it's like, I already made the Jill sandwich joke. But given that this is a Scooby-Doo episode, the Jill sandwich joke just felt fitting, so here's Jill with another sandwich. By the way, that sandwich is somewhat based off a Japanese katsu sandwich. I don't recall how I settled on katsu sandwiches, but it just sounded appetizing in the moment while drawing, so here we are. By the way, never draw food while you're hungry because it kind of muddies up motivations a bit. Anyway, all in all, I doubt we'll ever get a Scooby-Doo game like Resident Evil. Maybe one day, if anyone honestly cares. Who knows? Maybe somebody will remake this game because, you know, most game studios are out of ideas, so why not? You know? Anyway, folks, you know, thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And as always, you know, have a good one. Remember to tip the valet before leave. I don't know, something like that. I don't know how to end these videos anymore. Oh, it's gone. I'm done.
And don't call me little girl.